Hi, everyone. This is Jared from Care to Change. I'm a licensed mental health counselor here, and I work with a lot of teenagers and young adults who experience anxiety and depression and different experiences with that. And I know many parents out there are, having to deal with those same struggles too, with teens who are dealing with that, or younger children who have been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or are showing major symptoms of depression. And even though you may be getting your child that help that they need, it may be hard to parent through experiences like that. So I wanted to create this resource for you guys to have 5 practical tips and 5 things to keep in mind and to use as you are parents of children who may be struggling with anxiety and depression. One thing I will say is that anxiety and depression are two of the most frequent mental health challenges that people experience. And so, because of that, it's continuously on the rise. A lot more teenagers are dealing with anxiety and depression, and a lot more are just realizing that that's what the struggle they're going through. So, being aware of that's going to be really helpful, and understanding that that's on the rise is going to point to knowing that you're not alone in this. So I'm going to go through these 5 tips. Hopefully these will be good information for you guys, that these can be resources to help you. And if you need any additional help or want any more information on it, I'll include our contact information in the end. So to begin, the first tip I want to let you know is if you have a child who's experiencing depression or anxiety or any of those related disorders, I want to just start by breaking the stigma and saying you are not a bad parent for your child to be experiencing this. Honestly, mental illness is a thing. Mental health is a thing. And many people experience challenges with mental health throughout their life. It is not something that makes you a bad person. If someone that you care for or like your child begins to experience it, it is not a mark on your parenting at all. Sometimes these things naturally develop, whether they develop because of social growth problems, because of biological problems that your children are experiencing. For many reasons, people can have this. And so I want you to understand that this is a challenge that, regardless of the circumstances, your children may be experiencing just because that's what it is. So don't take this as a bad mark on yourself if your child begins to say that they're experiencing a lot of anxiety or they get diagnosed with one of these things. Now, just because I say that doesn't necessarily mean that because your child has this diagnosis, it automatically alleviates you from making mistakes as a parent. There are wrong things to do when you have a child who experiences anxiety or depression. There are bad tips and bad things that could make that problem worse. In fact, a lot of the kids that I work with, their parents have no idea how to help their kids with it, or they tend to assume that they know what was going to be helpful based on their own experiences of anxiety or depression, but it may not work for their teenagers. It may not work for their kids. And so it's important to know that there are ways to improve our abilities as parents to be able to better parent our kids knowing that. But just because they have that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a mark on us as being bad parents. And there is a way to continue to be good parents and to parent our children better, knowing that they struggle with some of these mental health issues. So, kind of rolling into our next point off of that, tip number 2 to recognize is your child, if they are experiencing anxiety or depression, is experiencing a mental health issue. Like any other individual in the world, this is a problem that they're going through, that they're going to have to face, and they need help getting through it. Now, I kind of want to address the 2 extremes to this. On the one hand, if your child says that they're feeling anxious, or they say that they're depressed, or you take them to someone who can diagnose them and they say that, then immediately you should recognize that this is a real thing that your child is going through, and not disregard it as something that well, everyone goes through that at some point in their life, or this is a way that they're just trying to get attention. Usually those tactics that we think like getting attention by using mental illness as that tend to be very few. On occasion, you might have a child who's using that as a way to get attention, but in many cases with actual reportings, children are not going to use that as an excuse. They're actually facing a real mental health challenge. So we need to recognize that and be able to support them in that. Now, I also want to address the other end of the spectrum, which is this is a challenge that your child is going to have to face. They don't have to face it alone, but they have to learn how to cope and work with this in their life. Because of that, you can't solve all their problems for them. If they're feeling anxious or they're feeling depressed, you can't step in and rescue them from that. You have to help them learn how to cope with that challenge on their own. because unlike some other challenges in their life, they're not going to be able to let you into their brain to fix it for them. They need to know how to use strategies and how to find that support in their life to help them. That doesn't mean that you can do nothing to help them, but that does mean that you can't step in more than they're willing to open up to you. And there may be ways that supporting them means letting them fight this on their own, or rather letting them use the skills that they have to be able to combat the emotional experience they're having without stepping in and saving them from it. You want to empower them to get through it, not just solve it for themselves. So think about this as like if it were a physical disability or a physical injury that your child experienced. You know, if your child sprained an ankle and it required time to heal, if your child was diagnosed with something more long-term and chronic, like scoliosis or diabetes, would you still treat your child as if nothing was wrong with them? Probably not. I mean, a lot of times we tend to make accommodations for the challenges that our children experience. So if your child says that they're struggling with anxiety, and this is something more than just like a general nervousness, and you know, you've talked it over with them, you've taken them to a professional, and it's determined that they really experience this. Or maybe you just see it in their life. You know that they're experiencing this because this is something you've gone through yourself. You need to recognize that this is a different way that they're going to experience life. And you need to accommodate your parenting style to be able to help with those special needs that your child is going to have during their experience with anxiety or depression. So on that, I want to go to tip number 3. Normal parenting strategies, as good and as well tried that they are, may not work if your child is experiencing one of these mental health challenges. Now, I'm not going to go out there and say that, you know, I know all the right parenting strategies, or maybe that there is even a right or perfect parenting strategy. But I will say that you can't treat a child who experiences anxiety and depression the same way you can treat a child who doesn't have those same challenges. A lot of people believe that discipline techniques really work. And, you know, discipline is a great way. Punishment systems are a great way to help children to work their behavior into a way that's going to be helpful and that gets them to be able to be responsible adults someday. But discipline strategies may start to break down when you have a child who, with depression, maybe feels hopeless and worthless already, and being disciplined for something that they can't bring themselves to do because they're unmotivated or don't have the energy to do it just makes them feel worse about themselves. So instead of giving them a punishment to help them know that their actions have consequences and that they can do better, you're actually putting extra burden on your child and making it even harder for them to be able to maintain the responsibilities that you're trying to show them to have. And the same thing may be said for anxiety. If your child already has so many responsibilities on their plate and you're trying to teach them through good parenting strategies that they need to stay on top of, say, their chores or everything that's going on, but they're feeling anxious and overwhelmed to the point of where they can't manage that, then you're going to be doing them a disservice by continuing to hold them responsible to everything they're doing without being able to tweak it to allow for their anxiety. If your child has a bad day, if they have a really intense anxiety experience or they have a depressive episode, you need to make sure that you can accommodate your parenting techniques to match that. Maybe they need a mental health day. Maybe they need someone to step in and understand what they're going through before they can go back to completing the tasks that you asked them to do. Maybe you need to change the chore list around a little bit so that on days that they're not feeling too great, you can put off some responsibilities to other days. Or maybe you can help them understand that, yeah, there's going to be days where we do have these mental health struggles, and yet we still have responsibilities we need to do. And so in that instance, you need to be able to sit down and empathize with them, help them understand how their depression or anxiety may be hurting them in their ability to complete responsibilities or do things around the house, or that they might still have to face punishments even with that. But don't just use that as if they weren't experiencing it. Sit with them, see how they're feeling, help them to gain the skills and the support that they need to overcome their mental health challenges so that they can continue to respond to those parenting strategies that you're using. I guess that's a good segue into tip number 4, which is saying that the most important piece that you need to have during this time when it comes to parenting your kids is connection. Connection is key. Your children need to know that you understand what they're going through, even if you can't completely understand it. Even if you've never been in their shoes before or you have no idea how to help them through that. They need to know that you can sit with them, to connect with them and listen to them so that their needs and their experiences that they're going through are validated, and that they understand that their experience is different, and you know that their experience is different, and that they might not be able to do everything normally as maybe you grew up with. Make sure that you're making time for conversation with them. Take time to have one-on-one time with your child. Ask them how they're doing. Let them vent to you and validate how they're feeling. If today was a hard day and they feel really anxious, sit with them with that. Let them know that today was a hard day. Then it seems like you're feeling really anxious from what happened. Even if their problems or what's making them feel that way may sound minuscule and like nothing, to them it's a serious thing. Especially when it comes to school environments, that social atmosphere is their entire life. And so if something, no matter how small or minuscule, is triggering their anxiety or depression that day, sit with them in that, validate that, because that connection is going to help build that understanding that they can feel understood. They can listen to ways that you can help them, or they can tell you ways that you can help them. And then they can overcome those strategies or the struggles that they experience with strategies that you guys can use together, instead of just suffering in their mental illness and not being able to overcome that. That's really going to help to break down some of those immediate reactions to depression and anxiety, especially if they know that they can go to you. They can tell you when they've had a rough day or if they're feeling intense emotions, and heaven forbid, if that's leading into an area where they need significant mental health help by a professional, then they can come to you and ask for that you can find a professional to help them, whether that be a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or more acute care. Finally, my fifth and final tip for you guys is to be informed. If your child is struggling with anxiety or depression, or they're diagnosed with that, you need to take the responsibility as a parent to know what that looks like and to know how to help your child. There are plenty of resources out there, and I can offer you follow-up resources as well that you can learn what anxiety looks like in your child's life, how depression presents itself, and what signs and symptoms to look for, and how you can best help your child, how you can accommodate your parenting strategies to fit the needs that your child is having in this time. The best help you can be to your child, on top of connecting with them, is being educated on what they're going through. Even if you can't empathize, even if you've not been there before, or I will even say, even if you have these mental illnesses yourself, they're gonna look different. There's gonna be new things that come along with your child struggling with these mental health problems. So getting yourself informed, reading up articles online, watching videos on YouTube, reading books about this is gonna be a helpful strategy for you to continue to be a good parent to them, while also supporting them and helping them in the needs that they have in this time. So hopefully these tips have been helpful for you guys. I'm going to conclude by sharing that if you guys have any additional requests for information or want to come in and talk about that, or maybe your child is struggling with anxiety or depression, or you suspect that, feel free to reach out to us, that we can get you hooked up with the resources you need to continue to be a good parent and to find the support that you need to support your child who is struggling with some of these challenges. So reach out to us. Our main line is 317-790-9396, or you can feel free to email us at help@caretochange.org. And we'd be happy to help you guys out however we can. Hopefully this has been informative for you, and you can use this to help be a better parent in your child's life. Thank you.